Hello and welcome to the Nextflow podcast by Seqera. This is episode 52 and today we're talking all about the Australian BioCommons project. I'm really happy today to have Ziad and Stephen on the call with me. Thanks chaps for joining, it's a pleasure. And we're going to hear all about how Nextflow and Seqera Platform are being used in Australia. Both of you have been in the community for quite a long time. You've both spoken at Nextflow summits in the past and things like that. But some people listening might not be familiar with you. Just start with a little introduction. What's your background? How did you end up where you are today?
Well, first of all, thanks so much, Phil, for hosting us. I'm Ziad Bkhetan. I have been working with Australian BioCommons for more than 3 years. And my background is in computer science and bioinformatics, with more focus on bioinformatics applications in the past 7 years. I'm personally very interested in software development and developing tools and methods and make them available for researchers. That's including what I've done during my PhD at the University of Melbourne. I have done some consulting roles in different companies and organizations here in Australia, Canada, and the US. And at Australian BioCommons, I'm a product manager and I look after some of our bioinformatics services, including the Nextflow Seqera service, where we have the platform. I make it available for Australian researchers and also providing Australian researchers access to Tier 1 HPC facilities at NCI and Pawsey.
Really cool. And Stephen, how about you?
I studied physics and maths at the University of Sydney and did my PhD in physics, actually, in optical fibers. Ended up moving to London for 4 years and doing a postdoc there for 4 years at UCL. I guess that was my first exposure to a lot of bioinformatics, molecular life sciences, and imaging work, because I was working in a lab which was engaged in a program called the Virtual Physical Human Program, the BPH program, which is part of the EU Framework Initiative. So I got a lot of exposure to this area through that project. And I think really I wanted to pursue a career in research, but ended up finding I was kind of much better at supporting other people through software engineering and accessing compute and building online platforms for people to run analyses and so on. And ended up moving back to Melbourne after UCL and coming to work as the Director of Research Computing at the University of Melbourne. So we grew a big team at Melbourne doing data management and HPC and cloud computing and so on. I was responsible for building the first Nectar research cloud with a really great team that I assembled, which is an open stack-based research cloud that's still running across Australia to this day, and was there for about 6 or 7 years. Built that team. It reached a natural conclusion and then had a great group of people running that place, and then moved over to the Australian BioCommons, which is hosted at the University of Melbourne, and really took a leadership position there, looking after infrastructure. I'm essentially the lead of digital platforms and computing. So I look after cloud, HPC, our data platforms, and I look after a few actual platforms like our sensitive data platform. And we also have a bunch of other directors that are responsible for other areas, including our bioinformatics platforms, training, comms, and so on.
Fantastic. Well, we'll have to get you writing some Nextflow pipelines for optical physics, branch out into that field. Tell us a little bit about BioCommons. I mean, what is this project? And it hasn't been around for that long, right?
Yeah, it kind of really came out. Genesis was in 2018. It was a very, very small team, just a few people, or a couple of people at that point. It was a national infrastructure investment into building national bioinformatics platforms. We really build national infrastructure to support researchers across the country doing molecular life sciences. We build and provide digital platforms, digital software tools. We import software, make sure software is available on various national platforms. We have a big community engagement program. We have a big training program. We operate a bunch of platforms, including the Seqera platform. We manage various communities, including the National Nextflow community. And we have a wide range of collaborators, both people that we collaborate with around operating these platforms, but also research collaborators and institutional collaborators that have their own unique challenges in this molecular life sciences space that we work together closely with. I think, and this will kind of go into our why Nextflow and all of that, but really I think that the powerful thing that's different about the BioCommons is that we really have quite a community focus. So we don't just look at molecular life sciences as a singular blob. We actually appreciate that there are within that fiefdoms that have their own needs, whether it's genome assembly or microbioanalyses or metabolomics, proteomics, human genomics and sensitive data, population genomics, comparative genomics. These are all areas that are unique. They have their own needs, their own pipelines, their own workflows, and we actually build and represent and try to understand the needs of all those communities through the BioCommons program.
I like that. I like the term fiefdoms. In NF Core, we spent ages trying to come up with what to call what are now special interest groups. And now I'm thinking, maybe, is it too late? Can we go back and call them fiefdoms? So is BioCommons its own entity, or is it a collaboration across universities, or what's the setup and the funding infrastructure?
That's a really good question. It's we are really part of a national program called NCRIS, which is the National Collaborative Research Infrastructure Scheme. Our parent organisation is Bioplatforms Australia, and they have been around for a long time, and they fund at various institutions and other organisations within Australia access to sequencing machines, metabolomics analysis, and so on. We really came about because we were initiated really as the bioinformatics arm of Bioplatforms Australia, because that was a big missing piece of their infrastructure, and obviously a valuable addition to that. So we're really funded through them, and in turn funded through NCRIS. BioCommons is formally homed at the University of Melbourne, but there's many other organisations we partner with. Some staff are located at the University of Melbourne, but we have other staff at QCIF, the University of Queensland, the University of Sydney, the University of New South Wales. We have very close collaborations with NCI and Pawsey, our two tier one supercomputing infrastructures. So we are very dispersed nationally, which represents the dispersal of where people do research. But formally, legally speaking, it's the University of Melbourne, which is the lead at the project. And you asked the question of what are we? Again, we kind of look like our own thing, our own company or organization, but legally speaking, we are a project at the University of Melbourne in the Faculty of Medicine.
Really? Really cool. And do you do any kind of direct analysis bioinformatics work, or is it purely helping researchers do it themselves by tooling and training?
Look, really our focus is providing the tools for people to do that analysis. We're not a full stack service provider in terms of doing the bioinformatics analysis for researchers. Generally speaking, it's really providing the training, the platforms, the tools, access to compute, and so on, so we can put it in the hands of researchers, and not just researchers who are expert at coding, but appreciating that there's a diversity of skills of high-end bioinformaticians down to wet lab biologists who have very little compute experience and are really building tool channels and platforms that whole spectrum can effectively use to do what's ultimately very sophisticated analysis of molecular data.
Where does Nextflow usage come into this picture? What's the history of Nextflow usage within Australia?
Sure. Well, as Stephen mentioned, in our work at Australian BioCommons, we engage with life science communities and we support them in their work. One of the main communities we work with is the bioinformatics workflow community. And through our engagement with them, we try to assess their interest in workflow management systems. We realize that Nextflow is one of the most popular workflow management system they use. Through our engagement with us, some of them, they may be starting their journey with writing workflow, so they usually pick Nextflow, but also converting currently existing workflow that they are using into Nextflow for better utilization. We also realized through the workshops we do that the Nextflow workshops are one of the popular workshops that we get a lot of requests for.
Stephen, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how the collaboration with Seqera started and what we're doing now.
Yeah, so like many things in the BioCommons, it often involves many different parts of the BioCommons. It's not just myself or Ziad. We have an excellent comms team and an engagement team and so on that we work with. So Ziad was just talking about that survey, really going out and building a workflow community and really speaking to the community about what are your interests in workflows, what direction should we head in. And that's, I guess, an example of the fiefdoms I was talking about earlier, of trying to identify that singular interest group or that special interest group and really speak to them about what they needed. So really Nextflow emerged as this leader in our focus. We had Evan give a talk online, and we run a range of webinars, which you can find on our website on various topics. And Evan gave a very excellent talk. It was very late for him. I remember in an evening, possibly midnight his time and daytime for us, as it happens with all of our timing and time zone challenges. But he gave an excellent talk just to really start to build interest in Nextflow in Oz. Through that survey process, we also identified the need to actually build a platform that could support users in deploying those workflows, making them available on national compute, giving people easier access to running those workflows, and so on and so on. We also had Evan and a bunch of others come out from Seqera and spend some time in Melbourne and other places and giving some local talks around Nextflow. And really it just kind of all went from there, leading up to that real launch of our platform when we spoke about it and announced it at the Seqera Summit in Barcelona in October 23.
Yeah, I remember your talk. Well, I was skipping back through it this morning, actually, before we came on the call. It's really fun hearing you talk about the setup. That was quite future looking. I think you said you had about 40 or so different kind of beta testing users at the time, and you were like about to go big. So, I mean, how did that go? And what does the Seqera platform setup look like for BioCommons, and how do you use it?
So we currently have our platform hosted on AWS, and we support Australian researchers from different institutes. I believe by today we have more than 90 different users. We have more than 18 different research groups from different universities and research organizations accessing the platform are working on it. We have 2 big institutes. We hire in the government. We have maybe more than 10 different groups heavily using the service. These users are accessing, the platform to some extent on a daily basis. They are at different stages. Some of them still in exploration phase. Some of them actually using it for production analysis. We also have large scale communities and consortia. We have the Australian amphibians and reptile initiatives that, they are part of the organization, researchers from different universities working on specific species. We supported them with some workflows and we had them on the platform that they run regularly. We also now working with the Australian structural biology computing community as well, trying to host the most popular tools and workflows around proteinfold problem on the platform.
So you're using an enterprise installation of Seqera platform, which is hosted on AWS, as I understand. Is everyone running their compute on AWS as well, or are you supporting multiple compute infrastructures?
We've really focused on engaging with our 2 tier 1 national supercomputing platforms, being the Pawsey Supercomputing Centre that's out in Western Australia, and then also NCI, which is the supercomputer centre in Canberra. We have done various tests on AWS and running the compute on AWS, but Australia has actually made a massive investment in tier 1 compute and making that available to our researchers. And we've done a lot of work and, really making those facilities life sciences friendly and collaborating with them to make those facilities more life sciences friendly. And part of that is making sure that external platforms actually integrate with these facilities nicely as well. So as you can imagine, a lot of HPC is very traditionally command line based, that has a very structured access model, and really trying to take that model and evolve it to say, well, now we have a web platform and people can start up and, type in parameters and receive their results all via a web platform while it's running nicely and visibly in the back end on a, very large computing cluster is where we want to get to and what we've actually done. I think the message that we tried to get across in 23 as well was that we don't just treat the Seqera web platform as an isolated thing. We actually see it as part of a Nextflow web of infrastructure where we actually say, well, the platform is not just that front AWS hosted thing. It's the platform plus the compute that sits behind it. So a lot of our efforts today are around how do we just make that kind of web more cohesive, work together, because from a researcher's perspective, just, can I log into the Seqera platform is useful, but it's actually not the full picture. Can I log in, select a pipeline, put in my parameters, successfully run it and get my results out? That whole end to end is what matters. So actually treating it in the end to end is where our focus is.
Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's 2 different things we're talking about, really. You've got the Nextflow community in Australia, and you've also got Seqera Platform, and those two might overlap, but there's going to be a lot of people using Nextflow who are not using Platform because they're more comfortable using Nextflow directly, and you supporting that user group as well through training and support and things as well.
We do support users in different contexts. Training and support solutions we have, we'll target the users regardless if they use our services or not. It's open for all Australian researchers. That's one aspect we deal with. We support by providing access to infrastructure that will allow you to run workflows in tier 1 HPC facility that we fully subsidize, including utilizing this infrastructure through the platform, but even just directly accessing this infrastructure, logging in and submit large scale workflows directly through the command line as well. We work with some of the partners to support them to convert their workflows into Nextflow. We have done some work with the CCI Institute, the Children Cancer Institute at Sydney. They had their own production workflows that were written in common workflow language, CWL, and they were in the phase to transition into Nextflow, and we work with them closely to convert these workflows into Nextflow, try to go from the raw reads to having fully annotated SNPs, and try to make these workflows very efficient in terms of batching the input data. In addition to the parallelization you get natively from Nextflow, users can add any resources for annotations and get the results they want. So there are different aspects we support the users, especially with the training aspects as well. Late last year, we have done a workshop with some support from Seqera. We had Chris Hackard joining us here in Australia remotely, and we gave a workshop that was organized by our comms and training team with some support as well from SIH. And these workshops are open for any researchers, regardless if they are using the other services we have or not. It's open for anyone.
Really cool. We're a year and a half in now from your talk in Barcelona, Stephen. Is there any highlights or lowlights, anything that has been more challenging than you expected or has worked particularly well?
It's a really good question. The highlights have been that for the people that really use it, it's amazing and they get a lot of benefit from it. I think the other highlight is seeing the confluence of Nextflow as a workflow language, that community coalesce with our training efforts, our community building efforts, and then the platform as well. And of course, that's just not an Australian thing. That is very connected to initiatives around the world. Being able to bring all those together has also been awesome. The thing of once you all start speaking the same language, communicating and, we're all working in Nextflow, and the collaborations and developments that happen are actually awesome. So that's been a really good aspect. I think a challenging aspect is really, it has been the uptake of the national service, I would say, has been slow, but I think it's also maybe just the nature of the platform, but also the language as well, is that it really is about productionized workflows, about people changing things into the Nextflow language, porting them over. And they really need to be things that you're going to run repeatedly many times over a longer period of time, because there is a setup time cost and effort to making all this stuff bulletproof, making it work on the platform, making it work on these back-end HPCs. And that naturally, I think, leads you to a smaller end-of-end users. For those end users, and we spoke about the Garvin Institute as well as WeHi. For them, it's been extremely beneficial, and it will continue to do that.
Really good. Yeah, that's something that's always at the forefront of my mind. I think the large scale production usage and value of Nextflow is well demonstrated and proven. But then last year in Barcelona, Rob Syme gave us a great talk about big Nextflow and small Nextflow. When you pass a certain threshold, and I found the same thing, you find yourself writing Nextflow workflows for everything. Once you get familiar enough with the language that the cost is not very high, then it starts being useful to write everything as Nextflow. But there's definitely that learning curve, like you say, and it has to be worth it at every stage of your cycle.
I'll have to look up that talk. That sounds good.
Ziad, Barcelona, you gave a talk in 2024. You talked about proteinfold, and it was fantastic talk, lots of really gorgeous visuals and everything. That's clearly a real nice success story there, where you've helped develop this pipeline.
Proteinfold project and workflow is maybe one of the great stories we have. The complexity of the problem, but also it's a good example actually to show how Australian BioCommons operate and work in general. As Steve mentioned, we work with different life science communities. We engage with them, understand their needs. And one of the communities we worked with was the Australian Structural Biology Computing in Australia. And we started this engagement with them. We talked with the champion of the community, Dr. Kate Mickey at the University of New South Wales. And she was providing us with all the needs and interests for the users and researchers from this community. And it was clear that there is a need to establish a platform to support them, utilizing the tools in this field. One of the things that came at that time is actually that there is a proteinfold workflow that's available in core. And we thought, well, instead of just starting from scratch and do the development, maybe we contribute to this workflow that already existed and make this benefits available for all researchers. And the nice thing is actually the smooth process we had. So we reached out to the maintainers, the guys at the Notre Dame lab. We talked directly with Jose, one of the main maintainers, and Cedric, the lab leader. And there was a kind of hesitation at the beginning because you always work with a collaboration that, some extra time and cost will come with the development. But the way things happened actually was very smooth. They were very welcoming for the new ideas. We had some plans. They were very accommodating for the time difference. And we discussed some ideas and we started to work together. And this actually started like this small scale, but just quickly actually expanded. And we had more collaborations. So we have people from UNSW contributing significantly to this workflow. We have also some support from Sydney Informatics Hub, from us, the BioCloud team and platform team directly from Australian BioCommons. We also had Paolo's lab as well, working on different models. And now actually we're going to do another release, hopefully very soon. We started with AlphaFold 2, CollabFold, ESMFold. Now we added bolts, HelixFold 3, Rosetta Fold, all atoms. And we also added like a nice visualization component to show all the results and, make this comparison just visually, smoothly, even if you run the workflow in directly on the command line, or even if you utilize the Seqera platform where all these results will just come out and make it easier for users to see actually the outputs of their results. The other success story other than the proteinfold was our work and support for Ozark Community. Just this community, they used to have a comprehensive workflow to do phylogenetic trees from raw FASTQ data. And, we started this work, they reaching out to us where they had actually a bunch of Python scripts. They work on one specific machine. There is only one guy they can reach out to. I will just do the analysis. The other guy is not there, they will have some problems. So we decided to work together and just convert the whole workflow, make it easier to use and portable. And we did it with Nextflow. And I worked with this group closely with Ian Brennan, who is the main developer of this workflow. It was a nice collaboration because I'm not expert in the problem itself. I have the expertise in the development aspect. I cannot talk about the phylogenetic trees, not my area of expertise. We just complemented each other. Whenever I stuck, I asked. Sometimes I get the information without actually understanding everything behind, but I get, enough information to continue the development. And from my part, I utilize my expertise in the development. And we have this nice workflow. We deployed it in the platform and now they use it regularly. Any person actually from the team can now go to the user interface, provide link to the input data, and they run it. The workflow can start from different sections, finish at any section you want, some customization in the tools you want very smoothly, which I believe facilitated their work significantly.
I love these stories where it's the same in NF Core, where you have different groups of people with different expertises who can kind of come together. And when you get that mixing pot, you get some really spectacular results sometimes. Domain experts coming together with infrastructure experts and so on. Really rewarding.
It was a good experience for me.
I guess one of the other use cases or stories that's emerging here is, following on from that structural biology story, is a lot of the focus so far with Seqera platform has been that is the platform which people access natively and upfront to run proteinfold or whatever pipeline. But really, it can be API driven. It can act itself as a bit of a backend infrastructure. And one of our big national computational structural biology user stories that we're responding to is how do we build a nice GUI front end, which gives medical researchers or other not computationally savvy people access to these sophisticated protein design tools in the back end. And we've decided to use the Seqera platform as that go-between because it manages all those pipeline. It can manage the compute infrastructure on the back end and then coming and building a nice GUI on the front end. So that's something where we're planning on, or we are working on at the moment and planning on releasing in the next 6 to 12 months.
A little pet project of mine is always thinking about automation. You can encapsulate a lot of complexity within platform and set it up one time.
Yeah.
It makes it much easier to build automation.
Yes.
It did actually. One of the very exciting, or I would say interesting use cases we had with automation is some work we done with AGRF, where they have their local HPC, but at some part of their workflows, like some jobs, they need a lot of compute that the HPC does not work, it's not enough for them. And we managed to do through the platform actually to have the configuration in a way that, everything runs on the HPC. But for these specific jobs, they would just go to AWS directly. And Nextflow will just implicitly stage the data, put them up to AWS, do the whole execution, then take the data down, or even play, with input and output in it, either locally on the HPC or having them on AWS. That was a very good use case situation where you might be thinking, I either have to run here or there. You could actually have this hybrid runs where some jobs goes to different infrastructure than others.
Very nice. Yeah, and Nextflow abstracts away all the complexity.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the community side of things. From my personal point of view, I'm mostly involved with NF Core, and the NF Core community started off in Europe. It's had a historically quite strong European bias. It's gradually spread across to the US and the Americas generally. And then I feel like the last few years, we've seen a real uptick in the number of contributions coming from Australian groups. There's the proteinfold collaboration, obviously, is been really celebrated. There's also like the OncoAnalyzer pipeline, which has been developed by folks at the Hartwig in Melbourne. You can start to see more and more activity and contributions coming from Australia or Australasia. And then I guess the pinnacle for me really is the recent March 2025 hackathon, where it was the first time we've had local groups join from Australia and New Zealand. How have you found that kind of integration of your Australian BioCommons community with the wider Nextflow and NF Core ecosystems and communities?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, Phil. I would say that the shape of the overall community, you come back to the word fiefdoms, there are many fiefdoms even within the Nextflow community, right? So we, you have this NF Core effort, you have people who simply use Nextflow, you have Seqera users, we run training, you have your ambassador program, and we have a bunch of, how many ambassadors do we have in Australia now, Ziad? 5 or 6 or so? So there's actually kind of many facets to this Nextflow community, and I would say that the work to bring all those different things together, even around the platform itself, is an ongoing thing that we're thinking about, that we're working on, that we're bringing together. So it's, and then we talk about our various developments as well in proteinfold and other collaborations. So there's lots of kind of elements to it, which is super exciting, but it's also complicated. And it's something that we need to keep on top of. And even internally within the BioCommons, we're constantly thinking, okay, how can we do better at engaging with this international community, but also engaging within Australia, within these various aspects of what you call the Nextflow ecosystem.
And I can add to this one, as you mentioned, Phil, there is, I think, a growth in the engagement from the Australian community or the Australian researchers, and the international community with time. I think the main challenges are around the time zone and the geographical distance that makes it very difficult for them to participate, either in online meetings or even in-person events and activities. As Steve mentioned, we have now 5 different Nextflow ambassadors, and they are actually, the good thing is they are in different stages that hopefully they will foster these communities in these different states, which will encourage others actually as well to participate in different workflows. I start to see more involvement in the development aspect and some of the Nextflow workflows at NF Core repository. We at Australian BioCommons, we're also trying to support all these activities, including the training activities we do, the workshops. We also engage in different webinars and the presentation, talk about Nextflow, about the services we have, and show the users and the researchers that we can help them and support them, which hopefully will bring them together in some point. And the hackathon as well was actually our first official participation in NF Core. It was a great experience. Our comms engagement team worked with actually the researchers, and we managed to organize this local site in Sydney and try to get, at least the super users we have now. And we try to have kind of a diversity from different states. So hopefully this will help to establish, new local sites in different states, which will make it easier for everyone as well to participate. We talk about the geographic distance between Australia, for example, Europe, but even within Australia, it's not that easy as well to get everyone in one location. Hopefully these activities will participate in improving and growing the community. And hopefully in the next hackathon, we'll be having different local sites in different states, and we'll be advertising all this information in our websites. So for our researchers to join. And we'll also be doing different workshops in Nextflow. We have planned a workshop at some point in June or July, just for beginner users, but we're also doing something more advanced on running Nextflow on HPCs, more specifically with examples on our tier 1 HPC facilities. But the same learnings can be transferred to different infrastructures for the users to utilize.
Brilliant. Yeah. I mean, the Nextflow community since day zero has always been very kind of grassroots, bottom up kind of approach. And I think it's really exciting to see Australia and New Zealand start to hit this critical mass where it's self-sufficient. In the early hackathons, we did have some researchers and some users joining from Australia, but it was a bit disheartening for them, I think, because they would log in and there'd be like 2 people and not really very much happening. And so I think people don't stick around for very long if there's not really anything happening. But by harmonizing our community efforts, and it was a pleasure working with your comms team. It's very, very slick operation. But by having that node in Sydney, then you have a natural center of gravity, and it means there is a momentum continuing there for people who might want to come and join, and it starts to snowball after a certain point. One of my highlights from a hackathon was waking up at 6 a.m. and seeing photos and all the activity that had been going on while I was asleep. And it really was like a continuous 24-hour cycle of as the world spun, people were collaborating across the planet. It's really, really satisfying.
Very cool.
How do you see things playing out over the next couple of years in Australia with Nextflow and with Seqera Platform?
I think from my perspective as more of the infrastructure platform person, I think it's really, it's obviously growing the user base of our Seqera platform and increasing its reach, really making sure it is tightened in terms of its integration with our national ecosystem of compute. We've seen some amazing exemplars of places like WeHire that actually use it to manage access to their own HPC infrastructure, and really being able to promote it as a platform which can be used in that way. Really, and diversifying those stories. How can this platform be used to improve your organizational bioinformatics agenda? I think is something we just need to do more of, telling those stories. So yeah, really growing that user base, growing our integrations, but also ultimately, like I said earlier, making these kind of sophisticated analysis methods more widely available to a wide range of skill sets within various parts of the life sciences ecosystem.
Having the experience that you do of setting up both Nextflow support as a service and also the Seqera platform as a service to a national group of researchers, if there's anyone listening in other countries with similar setups who might be interested in this kind of thing, do you have any advice? Is there anything you do differently or any kind of tips that you can give listeners?
It's a difficult question. We do actually, one of the main challenges is, establishing a national service comes with a lot of diversity on the users, their expertise, interest, their applications, their research areas, and having one platform that will be suiting everyone is a bit tricky. We try to make things very general, very easy to use. We try to provide a lot of documentations that we think actually was very useful for our users, in addition to all the documentations and online materials that, Seqera platform has, and Nextflow as well. We do have our own version of this documentation just to make it easier for researchers, make the documentation more specific to the platform, more specific to the infrastructure we have that most likely the users will be using. Providing more example, it did make it easier for everyone. It's still a bit of a challenging issue, but also if anyone has similar problem, we'd be very happy to have a chat with them, try to discuss with them, share our experience with them, and see if there is any aspect we can help and support with as well, even at international scale.
When we started the process of building this national platform, I guess we have a checklist or a process we run through of all the things we need to consider. And Ziad mentioned a bunch of them around documentation and what communities and what users and so on. I think possibly one of the most valuable things we did early on was we ran it as a beta service for a while, but we only engaged with groups who had a bioinformatician who either knew Nextflow or was willing to use or learn Nextflow. I'm glad we did that, because we would have otherwise been in the situation where we were doing all the development effort and the work, but it's really like, we will help you to up your skills in how to use Nextflow, how to port your pipelines to Nextflow, how to run them on the then Tau platform and now the Seqera platform. So actually kind of making it clear that we both have our roles and responsibilities, and your responsibility is to build within your own organization that Nextflow expertise, I think was really good, because we had a mixed bag of people that did have that expertise and they were ready to go, but others that didn't initially have that. We had one children's institute that didn't initially, but then they came back about a year or two later and said, we've got funding, we've hired a bioinformatician, and we're ready to go. And they've been doing amazing things ever since. So I think that was kind of a very deliberate decision to try and build local Nextflow expertise and home it in these different places, rather than just people expecting or seeing it be available elsewhere. So I think that was quite a valuable thing. And it's a big tip I would provide to, especially if you're going to build a national service like this, which, like Ziad said, has a lot of diversity in its users and so on.
Makes a lot of sense. So for Australian and also non-Australian bioinformaticians users, what should they go and click now? What do you want them to do next? What's your take home for everyone listening?
Well, I would say for researchers, please check out our website. You will see a list of all the services we have with some contact details in case some of these services are helpful for you. But also feel free to reach out to us and we can discuss, have a chat, and see how we can help you and facilitate your work as well.
Yeah, we've also got some great resources online. We have some various webinars around Nextflow and Seqera, which are recorded and available on YouTube. They can all be accessed through the biocommons.org.au website. So I'd encourage you to look at those. We have our Nextflow community. We're about to begin an office hours collaboration as well. So we're going to be publishing details of that soon. Please sign up to our newsletter, is the very best way to get notifications in your email inbox around what's coming up in terms of training, changes to services, and so on and so on.
Fantastic. And we'll put links to all of these things into the podcast show notes as well. So links to your website, the NF Core weekly office hours now has a website as well with details of when to join that call. So anyone who's listening can go and find those things.
Right.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today, folks. I know we're talking about time zones. This hasn't been the easiest podcast to schedule. But it's a good case in point. I really appreciate the time and thanks very much. And really impressive work you're doing in Australia. And I hope it can provide a blueprint for many other initiatives around the world to see your success and build on that. Long may it continue.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Phil. Thanks for your
Thanks so much. Thanks for hosting us.
Right. Thanks all. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.